On July 17, 2026, an Iranian ballistic missile slammed into a U.S. military base in Jordan, hitting a housing unit and killing 3 soldiers. It was one of the deadliest strikes on U.S. forces since the war began, and raised serious doubts about the air defenses that were supposed to stop it. Over the past 5 months, the U.S. and its allies have destroyed nearly 90% of Iran's missiles and drones with missiles called interceptors. The most commonly used is the U.S.-made Patriot. Patriots have been the most essential defense for the U.S. and nearly all of its allies in the region. The problem is this war keeps dragging on. Iran keeps firing ballistic missiles, and the U.S. has had to keep firing Patriots. Too many Patriots.
Our stockpile of missile interceptors are so low they cannot stop incoming Iranian ballistic missiles.
We've used a decade's worth of production in the first 4 weeks,
forcing Washington to look for cheaper alternatives.
So our military is in a bad spot.
The exact numbers are kept secret, but experts calculate the U.S. may have just a third of its Patriot stockpile left, between 700 and 800 missiles. Its allies probably have even fewer. The U.S. is also running low on long-range and ship-launched interceptors. Now, as the war keeps raging on and Iran keeps firing missiles, the big question is, are there enough interceptors left to stop them?
This is the most acute shortage, I think, that we've seen in recent military history. I think it's a canary in the coal mine.
So how did the U.S. run low on such an important weapon? And what happens if it runs out?
Protecting the army against the air threat is the job of the Air Defense Forces, and the star of that branch, the Patriot Air Defense Missile System.
Patriot stands for Phased Array Tracking Radar to intercept on target, and it's a lot more than just a missile. The Patriot is a multi-part system, first designed to take down enemy planes. When the Patriot's radar detects one, it sends a signal to a control station that calculates a path to intercept. The control station then instructs a launcher to fire one missile, then a few seconds later, a second as a backup. While in flight, the missiles send information back to the control center, which helps guide them into the path of the enemy plane. A typical Patriot battery can include several launchers, and since everything is mounted on trucks, it can pack up and move relatively quickly. The U.S. first used Patriots in combat during the 1991 Gulf War against Iraqi planes and Scud missiles, but they didn't do particularly well.
The Patriot's radar system lost track of an incoming Scud and never launched due to a software flaw. The Scud killed 28.
In 2003, Patriots did better when the U.S. invaded Iraq, but still made deadly mistakes.
U.S. Patriot missile shot down friendly aircraft,
shooting down the only U.S. Navy pilot lost during the war in Iraq.
Over the following decades, the Patriot's primary manufacturer, Raytheon, improved the radar, and Lockheed Martin made more accurate missiles. By the 2010s, Patriots were doing much better against all kinds of weapons, and was known as the workhorse of the U.S. air defenses. The U.S. deployed its Patriots to bases in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. It also allowed Patriots to be sold to more than a dozen of its allies, and even let Germany and Japan make Patriot missiles. It was a way of showing trust and sharing the burden.
It's been kind of this gold standard, gold-plated interceptor. Everyone wants a piece of it.
Jack Detsch covers the U.S. defense industry at Politico.
You have in Patriot a system that's combat tested, right? That's gone against ballistic missiles, that's defeated cruise missiles, against drones. This is a capability that a lot of allies feel like is a game changer.
But game changers are expensive. A complete Patriot system cost around $1.1 billion, and the most advanced Patriot missiles cost around $4 million each. By the mid-2010s, Raytheon had probably sold around 200 Patriot batteries total, while the US bought just a few hundred missiles per year. Many felt that was enough during peacetime, but through the 2010s, some US rivals began building huge stockpiles of ballistic missiles and drones. In 2014, Russia annexed parts of Ukraine, and prompted a few more U.S. allies to join the waitlist for Patriots. Demand for interceptors was rising, but supply wasn't.
You've heard world leaders, U.S. leaders, leaders in Europe warning about this, but you haven't seen the shift really happen in budgets and in terms of production, in terms of ramping them up.
And by 2022, it was already too late. Before we go any further, I want to thank the sponsor for enabling us to do the work that we do. So thank you to Outskill. If you feel like you need to learn the latest AI tools to stay ahead of an increasingly competitive job market, or you know some and you want to get better, Outskill is offering its mastermind course this and every weekend, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's 2 days of practical knowledge, expert mentoring, and real-world tools. And the best part is it's free to my viewers using the link in the description below. You'll learn deep research with Claude, build artifacts and dashboards, create presentations, use Claude connectors to automate tasks, build custom agents, and generate videos and visuals. You'll also unlock 3 bonuses: 50 secret Claude codes that turn it into a God-tier tool, a complete AI prompt library, and a personalized AI toolkit builder. Look, I know that AI is a sensitive topic. I get it. I've talked about it on this channel. And there are lots of companies that I would not partner with in this field. But Outskill is a service for and by human beings. And the goal is, however we feel about this technology, to learn how to wield it better. It's why Outskill courses have been attended by over 10 million real human beings. So right now, sign up for free using the QR code or the link in the description. Thanks again to Outskill for supporting my work. Now I'll take you back to the story. In 2022, Ukraine was invaded by Russia. While it largely halted the Russians on the ground, its air defenses were ancient and couldn't stop Russian planes and missiles from battering Ukrainian cities daily. So in early 2023, the US donated 1 Patriot battery to Ukraine. Germany sent another, and the Netherlands sent launchers and missiles. It wasn't much, but the Patriots made a difference. Ukraine even claimed that one intercepted a Russian hypersonic missile. So the US and allies sent more Patriots and ordered replacements. Raytheon and Lockheed expanded their Patriot factories, but warned that delivery would take more than 2 years. While the US and Europe scrambled to get Patriots to Ukraine, another war broke out in the Middle East. In October 2023, Hamas attacked Israel. Israel then invaded Gaza, Lebanon, and struck the Iranian consulate in Syria. Iran retaliated with more than 300 missiles and drones. It was a massive barrage, and while Israel's interceptors hit most, the US, UK, and Jordan fired some too. 6 months later, the US helped intercept another Iranian barrage, and another 8 months after that. While the US and Israel hemorrhaged interceptors, Gulf allies used theirs to fend off attacks from Houthi rebels. By 2025, these multiple conflicts were causing interceptor stockpiles to run low. Reports emerged that the US used 14% of its long-range interceptors, called THAADs, possibly 33% of a type of ship-launched interceptor, and worst of all, it had perhaps just 25% of the Patriots its military required.
I think Patriot is kind of the leading edge because of all these threats that we see multiplying simultaneously, but it's really across the board for air defense.
Yet in February 2026, despite the massive shortage, US President Donald Trump launched an all-out attack on Iran, and Iran retaliated against the US and nearly all of its allies in the region at once. They deflected most of what Iran fired, but then Iran changed strategies. Instead of launching both missiles and drones, it began using mainly drones. Because while a ballistic missile costs $1 million, a drone was just about 20 grand. The US and allies intercepted most drones with cheap interceptors, but they had to use expensive Patriots occasionally. A $4 million interceptor to take down a $20,000 drone is math that works in Iran's favor.
Iran has been able to really put the pressure on the Americans, and more so even on allies, by making them make these trade-offs to defend the civilian population, but at such a high cost that it becomes difficult to continue carrying out the war.
Now, after several months of war, the US and its allies are running critically low on interceptors. And with neither conflict ending, they're having to make hard choices. The missile that killed 3 US soldiers was part of a barrage that probably overwhelmed US and Jordanian air defenses. Trump, meanwhile, is blaming Jordan.
They did slip something through in Jordan. When you let other people do your job, sometimes it doesn't work out so well.
But reports say that the US is now letting some Iranian projectiles through its defenses in order to conserve interceptors. US military sources insist they fire on anything that's on track to hit US troops, but
now we are seeing cases where the US is allowing some of them to actually impact on base, in some cases damaging buildings.
Meanwhile, US allies are having to get more creative. The UAE is using South Korean-made interceptors for the first time. Ukraine is firing just one Patriot at Russian missiles instead of two, and pioneering even cheaper strategies against drones. But these are just band-aids until the US makes more interceptors. In January, Trump signed an executive order to pressure weapons makers to boost production, then awarded them billion-dollar contracts for more interceptors. His administration is even considering jointly producing Patriots with Ukraine. But while Trump throws money at the problem, what he really needs is time. Experts estimate that even with this boost, US Patriot stockpiles won't reach pre-Iran war levels until at least 2028, and even later for some other interceptors. That delay means the US probably can't fight Iran forever. In July, Trump held off an attack after his advisors warned that it could dangerously drain the stockpile of Patriots, but then launched strikes a few days later.
The administration has certainly tried to make the case they don't have a problem, but you just look at the gravity and you look at the production numbers, and they're not rising enough to meet this crippling demand.
But if the US barely has enough interceptors to fight this war, it definitely doesn't have enough to fight an even bigger war. China has one of the most advanced missile arsenals on Earth. It has missiles that can reach US and allied bases in Asia, the Pacific, and even further. China's also adamant about taking over Taiwan. In an invasion, it would first use these missiles to hit the US and allies to prevent them from intervening. The US has kept interceptors in Asia to deter China, but there may be fewer than before. The US moved at least some air defenses from South Korea to the Middle East in March. And a recent analysis concludes the US already lacks sufficient air defenses to fight a protracted war against China. China may see the US interceptor shortage as a window of opportunity to attack Taiwan, and the US may be helpless to stop it.
The administration is trying to pressure and lever the defense industry to do more across the board, but we're not even going to begin to be at the beginning of the end of having these negotiations, let alone having the missiles that you would need to fight these types of wars.
For now, the US and its allies are stuck fighting wars without the defenses they need, and praying that another one isn't around the corner. All right, thanks again for watching Search Party. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's your chance to. If you want to get more involved with my work, I encourage you to head over to newpress.com. That's a platform where I talk to you, ask you questions, you pitch me stories, and help me do my reporting. It's $60 a year for members over at newpress.com. I'm also putting out a pitch to fellow journalists. If you are an investigator or you have a story to pitch that you want to collaborate with me, please email me at sam.ellis@newpress.com. We've got a bunch of stories lined up for the fall. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.